Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for joining, and welcome to this first of a series of webinars where we pose questions that we hear a lot of companies asking and talk about the processes and technology that can help solve them. And today we're posing the question, how do I win the trust of my sales team with my price recommendations? And here to answer that question is Dominic O'Regan, Senior Strategic Consultant at Pros. Dominic's got more than 10 years experience helping a wide range of companies generating price recommendations and driving adoption within their sales teams. He gets very excited about how AI is transforming the world of pricing teams and helping make them progress their careers. And if you ever bump into him, ask him to draw parallels between AI algorithms and Star Trek. It's a fascinating lesson. Before I hand over to Dominic, though, a few housekeeping points. First of all attendees are in listen-only mode. Please pose any questions you may have in the Q&A panel throughout the webinar. We'll try our best to answer as many of them as possible towards the end of the webinar, and those that we don't get time to answer, we'll try and answer back to you individually after the webinar's finished. The webinar is being recorded and will be available to all registrants after the session's finished. Okay, so with that, over to you, Dominic.
Brilliant, thanks, Nick. By gets excited, that's Nick being polite about how I can get a bit obsessive and overexcited about AI and science and pricing and stuff like that. Okay, so the focus for our webinar today is that topic of how do we build trust between the prices that we're delivering and the sales team so that they can take best advantage of those prices, use them with confidence and get the most value for your business. Now, part of that understanding is extraordinarily simple, and we'll breeze through the simple bits as quick as we possibly can and get on to something more exciting. But we will focus in on a couple of key elements that are really going to support and drive the trusted relationship that you want to build up between the prices and the sales team. Then we'll look into how do we think about improving, refining, maintaining any model that we're working on. So at this point, we're not really thinking of a individual pricing model, even if you were just doing something reasonably clever in a spreadsheet. How do you improve that over time? What can you think about that will refine, adjust, and maintain any model, regardless of how that's working? And once we've talked through those areas, then we're going to have a little look at how Pros addresses the question of trust. So building on the understanding that we've put together, how does Pros work in that space, and how do we support pricing teams to create prices that drive trust and evidence that in front of their sales? Finally, we'll have a very brief little demonstration so we can see some of that in action before we go to questions and answers. So it should be quite straightforward, and we should be all done and dusted within 30 minutes. That's the plan, as long as I can keep on track. Okay, so the high level, really simple stuff to start with. If we think about a perfect world, we are creating super amazing prices. We've put lots of effort into it, or we haven't, hopefully we have. And those amazing prices we deliver to our sales team. Here you are, aren't you lucky? Go out there into the world and get the value from the customer, right? And so in our ideal world, the salesperson receives the prices, they're wildly excited about them too, and they then sit down and meet the customer, and oh, joy of joys, the customer loves it as well as everybody else. Sadly, of course, that nothing's quite that simple. In reality, sometimes the customer has an opinion. But the point of this slide is merely that the opinion of the customer is expressed directly to the sales team, not to us in pricing. And therefore, we need to think about the sales team and the sales individuals as the middle people, as the middlemen, if you like, in the relationship. They are getting our prices, which we think are brilliant, and then they're being told by the customer they're not so brilliant. And of course, it depends on the nature of your sales environment, exactly how that works. But in most situations, the pricing challenge expressed by the customer is just internalized by the sales team. they just get influenced by that on a continual basis, and it's just drip, 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 undermining the value of the prices I'm being delivered. So it almost doesn't matter what you give me next week. I don't think it's going to be any more accurate than what you gave me last week, right? And at best, feedback to the pricing team is ad hoc and feels emotional or whatever else, right? So when you think about them as piggy in the middle, I'm not sure if that game is familiar to everybody, but the playground game, they're stuck in the middle. They've probably got the hardest job in the picture, to be honest. So when we start to think about how we're going to build and maintain trust, you can Google elements required for trust in different sort of systems and environments. And I've just created an example list on the left-hand side here. Don't worry about it too much, not very interesting. The key thing is that when you do that sort of analysis, you'll find the same sorts of things coming up time and time again. The things that drive trust are the sincerity, the commitment, the integrity, and all these sorts of things, right? But if you begin to translate that into something more relevant for pricing and price guidance, really what we're doing is we're creating what people call a recommender type system. And don't worry about the label, we're just generating recommendations, right? My recommendation to you is that you should be able to sell at this price or discount from this list price or whatever else, right? So it's a recommendation system or engine that we're really talking about. And when you then think about the elements of trust from all sorts of different definitions and what is most applicable in a recommendation engine, you can really boil that down to three key things. And the first is how accurate are the recommendations. Nothing's going to build confidence like accuracy. How explainable? What is the explainability of those recommendations? How can I trust that recommendation? What do you give me to enable me to trust that? And the last one is the consistency. And consistency really means two things. It means if I ask for a recommendation, I always get one. There's no gaps, right? I always get an answer to the question. But it's not just that, it's also consistency sometimes across channels and things like that, right? Making sure that I don't just get an answer, but I get an answer that is consistent. If two people ask for the price for the same customer, they get the same price, you know, that sort of thing. Now, for the purposes of this webinar, I'm going to ignore consistency from this point on, mostly because if you are employing a system, even if it's something simplistic, if you're employing a system to generate pricing recommendations, then it would be pretty weird if it wasn't delivering consistency. So we're going to take that one as a given and focus in the other areas of accuracy and explainability. Explainability is a bit of a mouthful, so I'm going to turn that into accuracy and evidence. What is the accuracy of our prices? And if we can get accurate prices, then to be honest, you can build trust purely on that basis. But if you want to go fast and you want to get new people on board, then what evidence, what can you add to support that build up of trust over time? So we're going to focus in on accuracy and evidence. So thinking about the accuracy angle first, when we look at accuracy for a pricing recommendation system, whether that's something simple in a spreadsheet or whether it's sophisticated artificial intelligence, we should think in terms of three sort of key measures for have I got a model that's accurate, three ways of looking at it to my simplistic thinking. So the first is it relevant? And what I mean by that is the model you're using designed for the type of prices that you are generating and delivering? Really simple example, if I am delivering list prices to create price lists, then I want an engine, a model, a concept that is designed to do that. If I am generating negotiation guidance for the sales team who are walking in to have a negotiation, give them a range, stuff like that, then I need an engine, a model that is designed to do exactly that. If I want accuracy, I need a model that is relevant for the context. And also the currency, and I don't mean money by currency, I mean, is it current? And what I mean by that is, I want to make sure that when I generate something that is relevant in context, is relevant in time as well. The price I'm giving you today is relevant for today, not something designed to be generally maybe possible and workable for the next 6 months, or something like that, right? So is it relevant, context and time based? And then can I validate the accuracy? Can I, as a pricing team, do I get the tools I need to be able to understand what the model is creating and validate that I'm happy with the output? And you need to do that no matter how simple or complex the model is. You need to be able to understand the output and be comfortable that it is valid and accurate before you then stand behind that and have the confidence that also helps with trust, right, in terms of presentation to the sales team. And the last piece is, can I track this over time? Unfortunately, nothing is stable forever, and therefore you really want to make sure that once you're happy that the model is brilliant and fantastic right now, you want some mechanisms in place that allow you to automate, test, measure, and monitor your model over time so that you can track and keep on top of and do the things we're going to talk about in a minute to refine and adjust and make sure the model is running sweet, if that makes sense. So why have I got that little picture of a tape measure and a caliper on screen? The idea that I wanted to sort of layer into here is really in the context of relevancy and accuracy, because sometimes people confuse simplicity with relevance, accuracy, and measurability, and the two are very different. And what I mean by that is a more complex model is more valuable as long as it delivers more accurate prices. And accuracy is the aim of the game and the most important criteria for measuring how valuable my model is for building trust with sales. So I can understand completely how this tape measure works. It's pretty simple, no issue there at all. I know how it works. I trust that when I measure something, that measurement is correct, right? The digital caliper, I don't know how it works. I might be able to guess. It's probably not very complex, but I've never looked into it, so I don't know how it works. But I trust it because it's generating numbers that seem to make sense. They correlate for me, and it's generating numbers that are more accurate. If I need accuracy, I'm going to pick up the digital caliper, not the tape measure. And so that for me is a much better weapon or tool for a parallel with pricing accuracy. So accuracy, that's the foundation that we can build on to deliver trust with the sales team. But don't panic and don't rush out telling all the salespeople how amazingly accurate our model is, and because it's based on 4th generation neural networks or segmentation or whatever else, it's of no interest or use to them at all. All the point of the accuracy is to make sure that what we deliver to them is focused and accurate. The main communication in terms of how did we come up with these crazy accurate numbers should be around, we've got a model that learns from your success. You don't really need to go much further than that in terms of the message that will deliver the confidence for the individual sales at the front end. They need to know something that makes sense and is easy to understand, like we're learning from your best practice, something along those lines. Now, that's not the only thing they need, but in terms of understanding how the model works, that's about it. So what do they need? Well, they need some evidence that the number they're being given, or the numbers they're being given, are valid, relevant, and useful. So I think in terms of evidence as how can I help them see what has been considered? What have I used to generate the numbers I'm putting in front of them? So in a pricing world, can I show them that we have thought about how big the customer is? We've thought about the region, the industry, or whatever else, right? How can I share some of that with them so they're not second guessing, is the number relevant for my sales context? The second is benchmarking. How do I help them to have some points of reference that also validate my pricing? So here's a price for this customer for today, and here are some example prices of other very similar customers paying a similar amount to what I'm asking you to achieve. And the final piece is the mutual trust. So if I am, especially in a negotiated environment, I really should be giving you a range. I'm trusting you to work out the right point in that range, and you therefore begin to trust me that I'm giving you numbers that are relevant. There's a sort of a feedback loop of trust, if you like, in that environment. So I've chosen a really simplistic example. It's not about the watch, it's about the weather forecast. So when we think about a weather forecast, we can think about understanding what has been considered is the context, right? So I can see the weather forecast is for where I live right now, not somewhere else. It is relevant in terms of its context, right? Benchmarking, well, it said it was going to rain earlier and it did rain earlier. I've got some contextual information. Begins to fall apart when it comes to the mutual trust aspect, but you know, an analogy can only go so far, and I'll move on quickly. Okay, so accuracy and evidence drive the trusting relationship. Now, when we think about refining models over time now, how can we keep on top of and maintain the level of accuracy that is going to support that trusted relationship? It really comes down to how do we think about the data we're feeding whatever engine, process, or algorithms we're using. Now, in the AI world, people call this feature engineering, and that can sound scary and overcomplicated. Feature engineering just means what data have I found that I want to feed my engine with to see if I get better numbers. And the most common areas that people look to are things like product data, customer data, things about the way orders are received, market indices, and so on and so forth. But it's just about data. Where this can get a little bit more complex, and why it's called engineering rather than just features, is that with a lot of data models and science, people need to think about how they structure the data that they give the model. So if you think about something like my customer spend, do I give it the annual spend year to date? Do I give it the last 3 months rolling spend? What information is best to feed a model? And people play around with those sorts of ideas. Now, another way to think about the data that you might feed a model is, and this often helps address the question of how should I structure my data for any model, is what does your customer know at the point that they're buying? And by know, in inverted commas, what I mean is what are they consciously aware of and what are they unconsciously aware of? So what do we mean unconsciously aware of? Well, a customer isn't typically thinking a lot about the geography they're in when they're ordering, but it influences what they think is a reasonable price. They're not necessarily thinking about how big they are or the fact that they're a chemicals industry customer, for example. But it influences the way they look at the world. And so that's unconscious information that you might want in your model or models. And then conscious stuff is the stuff that's right in front of them, like, I'm ordering a really large amount that I don't normally order today, therefore I'm expecting some sort of special price. Or I don't need it in a rush, or I do need it in a rush. These are the things that they're very aware of. So when you start to think about what data do I have and how do I structure it in the best way, think in terms of, is it consciously or unconsciously influencing, and in what way, and therefore what design for that data has the biggest impact. So that's how I think about it. Okay, so moving on to a little bit of pros and how do we address the things and the areas that I've just been sort of talking about in general terms. So when pros delivers our AI, we are thinking of this in terms of, and we use a neural network based artificial intelligence system and environment. That can sound crazy scary, but don't worry about that. Here's what's important. We can drive accuracy through the same 3 measures and concepts that we were talking about earlier. So we don't just have a one size fits all, here's an algorithm, works for everything. It's designed for negotiation, it's designed for list prices, it's designed for web prices. No, that doesn't make any sense. We have multiple models and we use the right model for the right context. So we can think of it as a library of models to be relevant for the type of pricing that you need to deliver. Then we do a huge amount, and we'll see a little bit of this in the demo in a minute, but we do a huge amount to help visualize and support the pricing team in validating the prices that the engine is generating, that they're managing and they're creating. So how do you understand exactly how the price was created? How was it influenced by different factors? What's the win rate probability? All of that sort of information helps you to validate the prices that are being generated, to give you the confidence that you're delivering something of high accuracy to your sales team. And then finally, we focus in on measuring the engine over time. So how do we create metrics that will measure how accurate the engine is, so that over time, because data changes, and as you introduce and try new measures and add extra things into the model, you can begin to see, is it getting better, is it getting worse, track that over time, and maintain simple metrics that let you at a glance know it's definitely at least as good as it was last week. And it was amazing last week, so that's fantastic, right? That sort of thing. When we think about evidence, then we think in terms of, what do we give the sales team? And this is just one example. We have a library of examples, and this is simply how Pros chooses to deliver or illustrate information for sales team if they're using our quoting capability. So if we have full control of the visualization to the sales team, then we do something like this, and there's a few different examples. But what you can see on here is, on the left hand side, generating that mutual trust, giving them a range that has been built from the intelligence, not just saying here's a final answer, take it or leave it. We're giving them a simple understanding of what created that price. Do you know what? For this, where they were was important. The type of product was important. The geography was important. These are the top things that influenced the price you've been given. And I can go, well, yeah, that makes sense. I know they've included everything that's important. And then finally, can I give you some understanding of what other people are paying, or what the customer has paid last? And there's another example for this one that actually I think I prefer slightly, so maybe I should have put this on here, where you just list out, these are the really similar customers and exactly what they're paying. So we think in terms of, how do I give you that benchmarking information so you can trust that this price has considered what it needs to consider, gives me some trust, and is relevant, and I can see, well, everyone else is achieving this, so why can't I, right? Okay, so I'll take a breath, and then move into having a look at some software itself. Let me switch my screen for you, and I expect Nick or someone else will jump in and shout if you can't see it, but I'm pretty sure you will be able to see it. So what we can see now is a visualization of the Pros AI engine having run against a set of data, and what the engine is doing at a really high level is saying, right, okay, let's understand what the engine is suggesting is possible now. Well, the engine is suggesting that there's a big margin increase available. And in this example, the engine has been asked to find as much margin as it can, because it could be asked to find more revenue, right? But in an environment where it's saying, right, get me the best margin you possibly can, then what the system is doing is saying, right, well, over the next 3 months, I can increase revenue that is pure margin by an amount, what is it, 12.5 million euros in this example, and it's a nearly 6% increase in margin. I'm like, wow, amazing. I hope that's true, right? And I can see that my margin increase is mostly down to small price increases. That's what that little wheel in the middle is doing. It's showing me it's mostly small price increases, but there's also some price decreases that will drive incremental absolute margin for me. And on the right hand side, I can see kind of another visualization of that, where I can see how much price, how many of my prices are moving up or down, and by how much. And I'm looking for a reasonable range focused around the middle, slightly to the right, and I know, okay, that's looking like a sensible overall model. But when we come to validating prices, we typically really want to look at the detail. So let's have a look at an example. So now we can see a specific price recommendation for a particular customer buying a product on a particular day, let's call that today. Then what would the price be? And this example is based on a negotiation. So a negotiation, and therefore it's giving me a range. Here's your target. This is what you should be looking to achieve right in the middle there. But this view, remember, is for the pricing team. So I can see the range, but I really want to start understanding where on earth did that range come from? Am I confident in that range? And what I can see on screen now is how the engine has predicted a win rate for any given price. So it's not just saying, ta-da, here's a range and a number. The engine is saying, I can identify what the probability is of this purchase happening at each and every price point. And because I know that, and I know the cost and the product and everything else, then I can also work out what the probable revenue would be, and therefore I can adjust my targets, my floors, my experts based on that. So you can see something in here that I have never seen in any other price optimization engine before, and that is an absolute win rate. This is targeting a 92% win rate for my target price. I have never seen that in an engine before because I've never seen an engine before with the accuracy of this system. And remember, accuracy is the most important fundamental building block for confidence and trust in pricing. I'd love to spend loads more time on this with you, but we'll move on a little bit. And then if you're wildly excited and interesting, we'll come back and spend time together on it, right? The next bit here is equally something I have never seen before. God, going on and on about never seen before, aren't I? Right, what is this telling me? What I'm looking at here is a benchmark price on the far left-hand side for the product. And then I'm seeing for this recommendation, how was that recommendation influenced by the different pieces of information that we know? So we know where it is, we know what sort of customer it is, we know the channel and so on. How did that influence the price point that I was able to achieve? And we can see that in that penultimate blue bar, the customer price, right? Before we then layer in the price elasticity, the willingness to pay, okay, well, because of the win rate analysis, we can then nudge that slightly up or slightly down, if you like. What is amazing about this, to be honest, is that this information I can roll up against any slice of my business, not just in terms of the pricing recommendation here, but I can use this to see what's driving price response for Germany, for a particular country, for a certain product range, and so on, right? Really, really powerful analytical support for my whole business strategy, plus validating my prices, right? And then finally, the sort of information that I need as a pricing team, but I also talked about giving to the sales team where we show them other customers and what they are paying. So I can see that other customers are paying prices that are higher than what I'm asking you to achieve today and higher than the engine is saying is right for this particular environment. So that gives me the confidence both in the pricing team and then when shared with the sales team. So I have run as fast as I possibly can. I've left very small amount of time for questions, but let's see what questions we have and take it from there. I'll just switch back to my slides, and those are my emergency slides, and put it on here for questions. I should also say that if this is interesting to you, I and the team I work for would love to spend more time with you to talk about AI in detail, how these neural net things work, why they're so crazy accurate, so on and so forth. There was a lot of people register for the webinar today, and therefore we have made sure that we've got the company to support a special offer for customers, for prospects that are interested in talking more, might be able to move forward quickly. Use my name, contact webinars@pros.com, and we'll make sure we start a conversation and do something special for you to get this working as fast as possible. And as Nick said, there are some upcoming webinars. But Nick, have we got any questions in the questions panel? I'm going to open mine up at the same time.
We have, Dominic. We've not got much time for questions, but there's one. How do I know if I have good enough data for Pros AI?
There's a complex answer and a simple one. The complex answer is let us have a look at it and we'll tell you. The simple answer is yes, you do, because it's extremely rare that people don't. One of the big advantages I can't even speak now. One of the big advantages of the latest generation of artificial intelligence is that they're amazingly good at filtering out and understanding what is good within a data set. We're trying to tease out patterns, if you like, and examples of erroneous data simply gets ignored in understanding the important patterns. It's a bit of a glib response. We should test your data is the easy answer.
Okay, thank you very much, Dominic. That's all we've got time for. So thank you, Dominic, for all the insights and the compelling presentation. Excellent. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and we hope to see you again in our next webinar in October. So look out for the exact date, and we'll share the content from today with you all via email after the session. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone. Hope it was fun.